Hello, and welcome to Ask the Expert, the show where you can connect directly with experts and get your questions answered. My name is Ben Tezcan from Applied AI Services product team, and I'm excited to be your host today. Today, we are talking about building an AI-infused document processing application. With me, I have my co-hosts Marco, Krishna, and Vinod. Hi, Marco. Could you please introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Marco Castellana, and I am Vice President of Products of Azure Cognitive Services. Vinod, on to you.
Thank you, Marco. Hello, everyone. I'm Vinod Karpat. I'm a product manager on the Azure Form Recognizer team. I'll turn it over to Krishna.
Thanks, Vinod. I'm Krishna Das. I am product manager for Azure Cognitive Service Translator.
Thank you, Marco, Vinod, and Krishna. If you are joining us live, please get your questions into the chat. If you are watching us on demand, welcome. Please be sure to check out the resources provided in the description for more. Let me start with one question to Marco to refresh our minds regarding the great capabilities of Microsoft AI platform. And Marco, the question is for you. In what ways are the customers using applied AI services and cognitive services?
Well, that's a broad question because there are a lot of capabilities that are included in applied AI and cognitive services. But one example is my daughter's on a plane coming out here right now, and she's using Duolingo as we speak, and that means that she's using our speech capabilities because those Duolingo voices are actually cognitive services neural voices. So neural voices are one very common way that you often interact with cognitive services, even when you don't know it. On the Washington Post, when you get it to read your news and stuff like that, that's a neural voice also. You see our language capabilities being used a lot in the contact center. So you see contact centers ensuring their quality with our language capabilities and also using them to put up things like chatbot. You see our vision capabilities all over the place too, again, behind the scenes. But for example, we're working with a major retailer now to improve their self-checkout capability so that when you hold an apple up to the self-checkout thing, even if it doesn't have a barcode, it can detect what kind of apple it is and charge you the right way. And now with our Open AI service, we're starting to see folks do some really interesting generative stuff too. That is generating text for marketing copy, for emails, and things like that. In today's session, we're talking a lot about some of the applied AI services like Form Recognizer. And so we'll get into that more deeply in a little bit, but that's where we're applying different areas of artificial intelligence like vision and OCR and translation to form one kind of coherent whole application. So it's a pretty broad set of capabilities that we have here, and people are using them for all kinds of different things.
Thank you, Marco. This is so exciting. And I do remember within the session, we were talking about Form Recognizer and our language capabilities. I want to ask you, what are the valuable parts of Form Recognizer services? How do you think the customers are using and utilizing its capabilities?
Yeah, thanks, Ben. Form Recognizer has a broad set of capabilities for customers, right? So you can start anywhere from using one of the document agnostic models, things like just extract and layout, to really building a custom model that extracts information that you're looking for from a specific document type. Form Recognizer's capabilities span across the spectrum, and so there's a lot of different scenarios that customers using Form Recognizer in. So let's start with simple document process automation kind of scenarios, right? So processing invoices. We have a pre-built model for invoices as an example that's really popular with a lot of the expense processing scenarios for every single organization, whether that be an organization that is sort of an expense processing organization, or whether it be an organization just like Microsoft, where we have internal teams using our expense processing services as part of the invoice pre-built model as part of the expense processing service. We also have a number of different capabilities within custom models. And what custom models allows you to do is essentially build a model that targets a specific document, right? So we have pre-built models that target specific document types, for example, pre-built models for things like invoices, W-2s, health insurance cards, and so forth. But organizations can also build custom models that really address a specific form that they need to deal with. A good example of this would be Air Canada, for example, that built out a COVID vaccine validation form in just a matter of a few weeks because they were able to use the capabilities of the form recognizer, train a custom model that deals with extracting the vaccine information for each of their employees that they needed to get certified. And so those are just a few examples of how customers are using form recognizer today. I can keep going. There's also scenarios where customers are using it to featureize their data as they analyze, as they take documents that are coming in as PDF, extracting the sort of feature information that they need, and then using that for more advanced analytics scenarios like fraud detection and things like that. So there's a whole host of different varieties of ways that customers are using Form Recognizer today.
Thank you, Vinod. As a follow-up question I'm seeing from the chat window now, Leonardo is asking, how can we extract item descriptions, quantity, and amounts in an invoice document?
Is that okay if I take that? I think
Yep.
that's a great question. The invoice pre-built model has exactly all the information that you're asking for. So the invoice pre-built model, essentially think of it as a model that's trained on millions of invoices, all of different formats, different varieties, different languages, and it can now extract all the information that you're looking for. So typically the invoice model extracts header information, and you think about header as things like your invoice ID, the ship to, your bill to, and things like that. And it also extracts the line item information. So those would be the things that you're asking about, which is really the item description, price, unit price, quantity, and so forth. And then finally, it extracts the summary information at the bottom of the page as well, which is typically your taxes and your subtotals and totals. So those are all sort of fields that the invoice model exposes. And so you can actually try this out in the Form Recognizer Studio today. So taking any invoice, Studio also has an example of a invoice that you can use. But if you upload an invoice, click the Analyze button, you should get a response that shows you exactly all the fields that the invoice model can extract.
Thank you, Vinod. And Krishna, I do also remember lots of exciting features and announcements regarding our language pillar in this session. Could you just summarize with us, what were the most interesting features that we announced?
Sure. So the language service is a basket of all language capabilities. It has the features to extract text, extract key phrases, classify text, extract named entity recognition, and so on and so forth. And in the last Bell conference recently, we announced ability to custom text classification, custom named entity recognition, and conversational language understanding. And apart from that, the service adds a new feature called conversation summarization, which abstracts summary of natural language conversation, such as a support call, reason, and resolution for a call center kind of scenario. And now the translator service, which is also part of the language pillar, can translate scanned PDF documents to target languages while maintaining the layout and structure of the source document. Meaning, you can reproduce an expense receipt or product instruction manuals in a new language at a fraction of a cost. We're also excited to announce the general availability of Language Studio, which provides one-stop experience for all language capabilities we talked so far and beyond.
Thank you, Krishna. And there is one follow-up question from the audience. They are saying that they are using language services to process email messages, and they are trying to do semantic reasoning around automated workflows. Could you share your experience around this area? What kind of things they should consider while developing those kind of projects, and what are the broader kind of similar use cases you have seen with your experience working with customers?
We are using. Yeah, this is a great question. So there are multiple services. So we do have a sentiment analysis where the user extracts the content from the email and do a sentiment analysis, and then find out, okay, whether the sentiment is a positive or negative, and depending on that, and the emails get wrote out. And um, if the question is about related sales inquiry, the automation workflows uh, routes the email to the sales team, and if it's going to be support related, it routes to a support team. So that is an automation workflow which is predominantly used. And there are other scenarios. If you have any interest on a very specific scenario, we could help you out on how to address that particular scenario.
Thank you, Krishna. And Marco, another question for you. I do believe there is lots of excitement regarding OpenAI and Microsoft partnership with OpenAI. What else we should know, the audience that is pretty much interested in, like how I can enable an Azure account with an OpenAI service?
Well, right now, the OpenAI service is in limited preview, and we're looking forward to releasing it more broadly towards the end of the year. So for right now, you can sort of get on the wait list and sign up for that limited preview in anticipation of that going live at the end of the year. And in the meantime, take a look at this session that we did here with OpenAI and other documentation that we have now on sample code on how to use it. It is very different than anything that you've used before. It's a very different type of model, and the way that you interact with it is very different. And that's going to take a little bit of adjustment, as I think you'll all see in the near future.
Thank you, Marco. And I have a broad question. I believe all of you might have a point of view regarding the question that I will going to ask to you. Like a customer and someone from the audience is saying, it is very difficult to persuade my customers to explain the value of Azure Cognitive Services. So most of my customers are willing to go deploy their own models instead of utilizing existing capabilities. Maybe we can do like a round robin and everyone could share from their perspective how they are looking to that problem space and what kind of experiences you can share with our audience. Marco, you want to take this again?
Yeah, I get this all the time. Because if you think about where we just came from, if you wanted to build a vision model, for example, just 5 years ago, you would have to train your own model. There was no alternative. There was nothing else that you could do, or a language model for that matter. Custom training was the norm until very, very recently. And a lot of folks, I think, haven't come to realize yet that there is a new world that is just now arriving of what we call foundation models. And these foundation models are generally applicable. The OpenAI service, and I just alluded to it a moment ago, is one of them, but there are others as well. So our new our new vision model that's coming out, which we codenamed Florence, and our new conversational language understanding capabilities as well. They basically understand concepts out of the box. And so one of the things that you can do, and that you can increasingly do as these things become publicly available, try parts of your use case just with the SDKs. You can whip these things up really quickly. You'll find that the vision capability recognizes most objects in the scene without any training. So this is zero shot. And this is also true of the language capabilities and of OpenAI. And that can go a long way towards convincing some of your customers that, you really can do this. A lot of folks are skeptical, but it is changing really quickly. And, you have to see it to believe it. Krishna, maybe you have something to add on that.
Yeah, thanks, Marco. So it's very key to build the standard capabilities. The standard model has the capabilities of each scenario. To give an example, so a few years back, in the mission translation world, the general model addresses very specific scenario, and a customer used to bring their own data and build custom mission translation models. Now the technology is so increased, and with the neural machine learning technology and transfer learning, the quality of the general model has improved to a large extent. We find customers are able to use the general model, which is available out of the box, to do the translation to the nearest possible quality, and rather than going and investing more on custom model. However, for very specific scenarios where people want to have their own terminologies, rather than building a full-fledged custom model, users are tending towards bringing a terminology dictionary, and which is very simple, just to give a pair of source and target language dictionary, and use it and get the translation as required by the customers without getting into a full-fledged custom model. So in a nutshell, the general model are evolving with high quality, addressing broader scenarios, and the need for custom model is for very specific scenarios.
Thank you, Krishna. What about Vinod? What you are seeing in the document understanding, document data extraction space?
Yeah, I think I'll talk to it from a slightly different perspective. I'll talk to it from an applied AI perspective, right? And the question that I typically ask when I hear this sort of an argument is to say, do you want to be an expert in understanding all the nuances of a PDF document, or do you really want to enlighten or like light up your business and focus on the things that drive the most value to your business? I think like some of the challenges that our teams work with are like understanding all the different document formats, understanding how you can extract the right information from each of these, and what customers really want, if you think about it, at the end of the day, is accuracy and completeness. Those are the two things that they're really focused on, right? Like, can you do this in a accurate? I think there's probably a third one, which is timely as well, right? So, can you do this in an accurate way? Can you extract all the information that I want completely, as well as make sure this happens in a timely fashion, right? And getting all those three axes to line up is a significant engineering challenge, right? And so, I think the concept of taking something from, say, a POC that says, here's an example of how I can use some of the tools that are currently available and build this, to actually building something at scale that can work for you is a challenge that most customers probably are not weighing enough in terms of trying to determine what when they go through this build versus buy sort of experience.
Thank you. Thanks, Vinod. And the other question that I'm seeing in the chat window, I will just aggregate this and ask as a single unified question. The language support of our cognitive services. Like, I do know from different set of capabilities, we might have a different set of coverage. So I will again start, Marco, with asking to you, what is our strategy regarding the language coverage? And then Vinod and Krishna, maybe you will go into the details of which additional or which languages we are covering in language and the document intelligence, like form recognizer pillar. Marco, over to you.
Well, our strategy is that, I mean, as it stands right now, if I'm not mistaken, we cover roughly 75% of the languages spoken in the world. That is to say, with the languages that we cover, and I think there are 121 of them or more. Krishna's really the expert on that. But the goal ultimately is to cover all of them. There are something like 6,000 languages in the world, and the language is just a dialect with an army. And there's many more dialects. But in any case, that's our goal. And, that is underlied by one of these foundation models I was just talking about. I mean, the fact is that we have underneath here a large model that understands just about every concept that's expressible in any human language and can be mapped to these different languages, which makes it faster and easier for us to add support for new languages as we do. Krishna, as I said, you're the expert on it.
Yeah, thanks, Marco. So this is a very interesting question. What's the language coverage? So there are multiple dimensions to how do you address the language coverage. One is the business need. So what people use the language most in the cognitive services ecosystem. If we see that, what we find is the top 15 languages does more than 90% of the business. Okay, and if Microsoft looks only purely from the business perspective, then we would have been done with 15, 20 languages. But it's more to that. We want to ensure that each and every small languages need to be languages which have digitally low resource need to be represented, and we want to bring opportunity of those people to use the digital technology. So we are investing heavily on expanding our language coverage as much as possible. Currently, all the language services supports more than 100 languages, and some of them supports 111 languages, and we are expanding more. If you see, we also work on endangered language. Currently, Translator supports close to 20 small, rare resource languages, which are as low as spoken by 600 native speakers. We have been working with respective government who want to provide support for endangered languages, and we are working with um, the education institutes and the communities and to add support to that. To give an example, Maori and language and Inuktitut language, Inuktitut language, all those are added very recently. And we also go into the minority dialects, like we support 6+ Chinese minority dialects, rather than apart from supporting the standard Mandarin language. The key is once you support more languages in Translator, all the other services can leverage on it. The language services like semantics understanding or text classification can leverage internally within Microsoft how to understand a content which is not supported in the languages natively supported by the service. So that allows us to expand all our cognitive services to a broad set of languages. Thank you.
Thank you, Krishna. And Vinod, I also want to ask you the language coverage regarding document data extraction. There is also a question regarding the Hindi language, and looks like the Abhishek was using it and pretty much excited. But I'm sure the audience wants to as well understand and hear what else, which other languages we are covering within our document intelligence form recognizer capabilities.
Yeah, thank you, Abhishek, for the feedback. That's great to hear that you're seeing Hindi and you're liking the capabilities there. We continue to expand language coverage, right? So I think that the core capabilities, if you think about form recognizer as a stack, at the bottom of the stack we have OCR, and we've got about, I think last time I checked, it's about 160 different languages that we support. We continue to grow that, and that continues to be a focus for, similar to how Krishna described it. It's across the board, across all of our cognitive services. As we go further up the stack to more of the, like, how do you build custom models, for example, we now have the ability to build custom template models using all the languages that OCR supports. We're continuing to expand custom neural models to expect. When custom neural models started, it was English only. Now we're expanding it slowly to address some of the other Latin languages like Spanish, German, French, Italian, and so forth. And then, if you think about all of our pre-built models, we're doing the exact same thing with our pre-built models. We're expanding language support in each of those. So it's a journey. We're still just getting started, but we're continuing to grow it, continue to expand the languages that we cover. So obviously, like Abhishek mentioned, Hindi is definitely one of the languages that we plan to support. We're also looking for feedback from customers, right? So as you talk to us about this and you say like, hey, I'm seeing a lot of interest in this particular language, or where is this on your roadmap, we have some flexibility to ensure that we can help you with sort of reorganizing some things for you.
Thank you. Thanks, Vinod. And I do see people are as well trying to understand how they can start and how they will start testing those capabilities. So I will ask you again, Vinod, in what ways, the audience and the developers who are interested in those services could get started with Azure Form Recognizer?
It's a great question, and it's super simple, right? Azure Form Recognizer is extremely easy to use with the new Form Recognizer Studio, right? The first thing I'll share with you is there is a free tier for Azure Form Recognizer, so you can absolutely use all the capabilities of Form Recognizer using just the free tier, so it doesn't cost you anything to get started. The next thing I'll share with you is the most useful resource, which is the Azure Form Recognizer Studio. And with the Studio, you can essentially play around with each of the different document models that we have, look at each of the outputs, and you also get some sample code that shows you how to integrate that within your application if you do want to use it, right? So the core value proposition in the Studio is it takes a document, which is a really visual representation of text, and converts that in a visual sort of way to help you understand what are the different things that you can extract from a document. So layout, for example, with the most recent update, you now get paragraphs and paragraph roles. So it'll tell you that this is a particular paragraph, and this paragraph has a role of a section header. So now if you want to do some things like document decomposition, so really say like, okay, maybe I have a medical form, I have some doctor's notes in a particular section, I want to take that and just use that as my input into my text analytics for health service. That might be a scenario that you can absolutely just wire up by testing a few things out in the Studio, validate that it can work, and now you're off and running. Similarly, building custom models, it takes you only about 5 documents to get started. And you can go through the entire labeling process in the Form Recognizer Studio, which will then build out the entire training data set for you. You just need to, essentially have a plan to say, like, these are the fields that I want extracted from each of these documents. And you can go ahead, build, train, and test a model in a matter of like 10 to 15 minutes. So the Form Recognizer Studio is great to get started. It essentially gives you all the toolings that you need to get started, test and validate, and even shows you how you can start using this as part of your application in either the REST APIs or the SDKs.
Thank you, Vinod. Krishna, looks like everyone is kind of excited with the new feature that you announced regarding scanning PDF and translation through that. How customers could use it, how they can start utilizing this feature.
That's a great question. So the simple way to use is if you're already using document translation capability in your service, there's nothing new to do it. So we support, if you just pass the scan PDF document and we recognize it's a scan PDF and do the translation. If you're new to the translation, then all we need is subscribe to Translator resource. The single translator resource can help you to translate both the text and documents. All you need is Azure Blob Storage, where you keep your source document, and then make a translation request. And you can put up to 1,000 documents into the blob storage, and in a single request, you can translate all of them. And then once we translate all of them, we put back into the Azure Blob Storage, and you can consume from it. And the beauty is you can translate files as large as 40 megabytes, and you can parse glossary terminologies and apply the terminologies what you want to do without doing any additional effort of the things like what we talked about earlier about customization. If you want to have a company logo and a company uh, motto to be represented in a very specific way in the target languages, you can just do it just with a glossary. And it supports 31 different file extensions and comprehensively addresses in the market. Thanks, man.
Thank you, Krishna, and thanks all Krishna, Vinod, and Marco joining to us today, and as well the audience. Thank you for being with us. Thanks for joining us. Please head to the link below to see what is coming next, and thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.